Prime Minister Trudeau kicked off an infrastructure fund today that he says will keep Ontario moving and create jobs. That story kicks off the roundup.
The federal contribution of $1.48 billion comes from the Public Transit Infrastructure Fund and will help improve the quality of life for millions of Ontarians. As of today, 168 projects have already been approved for funding.
Nicole Verkindt is the founder and president of OMX in Ottawa tonight. Nicole, what do you make of this? I mean, this is an awful lot of money. They're saying $1.48 or $1.49 billion, the much waited for infrastructure funding. Is this the kind of thing we can expect to see really sort of ripple out into the economy beyond these specific projects?
Well, that was the first thing I thought of. The company that I run, OMX, specializes in connecting government contractors with local suppliers and then tracking what jobs are actually created from those projects. So I think there's an immediate benefit to infrastructure spending, and this is good that the government is doing good on their promises they made in the election. There's an immediate benefit. I've always seen infrastructure as the foundation of an economy. You know, if you can't move, you really can't work. But it's all, the downstream benefits can be enormous. And I've studied that at length. We've come up with, in partnership with Statistics Canada, specific economic impact multipliers that apply against different activity types to really estimate, you know, steel cutting has so much of an impact to the economy, and software and other elements of that all come together through large projects like infrastructure projects have. So I think there's an opportunity here to have a big impact to the economy. I know that Canada is being left out of large infrastructure projects in the U.S., for instance. There's an exemption for some industries, like the defense sector, where Canada has access to those sectors, but in infrastructure we don't. And so I hope that with these projects we see coming down the line that there's some incentive for the bidders to buy locally and to source locally.
And we've seen BC already announced theirs. Ontario's came today, and I mean, it was up in Barrie, but 500 million of the funds, I think only 688 million funds were actually unveiled today. There's more yet to come in that. And 500 million of that was just in Toronto. So a big boost for the city here.
Yeah, it's very exciting, but I think we have infrastructure problems across Canada, but we really have them in Toronto. We have a lot of immigrants coming to that city in particular. We have a lot of growth going on. And, I mean, I was just in France, I know so were you, Peter, and I always marvel at their infrastructure. I mean, countries like that think in hundreds of years and huge advances, right? And so I think we need to get a lot better at that and looking at it holistically and saying, you know, what is the long-term strategy for this city and for this country, and what should we be thinking about to reduce congestion long-term, and, you know, where are our population numbers really going to go? And then after you think about that, you think about what can be the downstream implications to creating jobs and stimulating technology development through this government spending. How do we really leverage that spend? And I hope we don't mess that up.
And just lastly on this, I remember when I was up in Ottawa covering the budget, they talked about, we're going to have all this infrastructure money, but it's going to be on non-sexy stuff. And it proved to be pretty true. There's a whole lot of money, but it's for, you know, the turnaround yards and the fire main at one place and escalator service in another. It's not the stuff that I think you'd be able to get a ton of traction on in individual.
Well, I love the non-sexy stuff. I mean, I think that's where the real need tends to be, and I think there's a real industrial base that's serving those sectors. And I think there's some real sexy stuff you can do in those sectors. For instance, there's all sorts of advanced manufacturing technologies that exist in the non-sexy industrial manufacturing space that we could apply, and if we required some Canadian technology that could be used and leveraged.
Okay, next story is Toronto's, this company Ecobee, the smart thermostat that you know is competing in that space with Nest, the big Google project in that same space. $35 million funding boost. Is this the kind of company that can really see a major breakthrough in that, I hate the word, but in that Internet of Things?
Well, this is exciting. I mean, this is a 100% Canadian company. They've been around longer than Nest, which was what I got for my birthday this year. You'd think it's kind of odd to open up a thermostat and be really excited about it. But, I mean, this company was started in Canada. It probably was the first of its kind. It probably has some of the most advanced technology when I really compared the two. But Nest has taken off and was sold for over $3 billion to Google because they just had so much more financial backing, and they had an Apple engineer design it, and they just had all this extra oomph to the company.
Yeah.
So I don't want ecobee to be another. Well, it could be the next BlackBerry. I want it to go to the next step. I think it's a good Canadian success story that has most of its sales in the U.S., which is great. And the thing I love about this story, this funding they're getting, it's essentially from a distributor and a client. The VC fund is the fund owned by Amazon, which this product integrates with Alexa and the Amazon product. So I think it's an exciting story, and I hope they can keep it going.
I mean, we had the CEO, I believe, the CEO of ecobee in on the show just a couple weeks ago, and he's a fascinating guy. Like you say, it's a fascinating story. But what he was saying, or what he implied at the very least, my takeaway was that the world is really dividing into sort of, Google and then everybody else, and that they are integrated with the Microsoft Alexa, and they do stuff that the Nest doesn't do, turning on your lights and off your light. It's a more integrated system already. Is that, if you're competing against something as monstrous and powerful as Google, is that the key, is trying to figure out where else you can integrate, what little things you can do to make that difference?
Yeah, I mean, the general consensus was where you were going was the integration, and this product integrates with Apple HomeKit as well, which is what I've used, but I managed to use Nest because actually the integration I don't believe matters that much, because all of these products are web-based. They all work together, but you're right, some of them have something very unique. What I can see with ecobee is it allows you to change temperatures in different rooms, and they have 2 different sensors, which is something slightly different than Nest. What we can't forget, though, is I see all of these products as big data plays in the long run, and there's going to be massive amounts of data that come out of these products and companies.
Privacy issues, to be sure. On the tech file, we were all watching for Tesla's announcement today. It turned out to just be a longer, better battery. But the driverless car story that's been jumping out at us this week is this partnership between Delphi and Mobileye. Mobileye used to be in partnership with Tesla. They've joined forces to release, as far as I can tell, it's the first full system autonomous driving software that you can just sell to the car makers and they can install. How big of a breakthrough is this?
I see it as a big breakthrough. I mean, I think we're going to see a lot out of the autonomous car space. I was looking at just the implications to congestion and infrastructure alone by adding autonomous cars. It would actually double our capacity on our roads. And so they're all connected with other problems we have as a society that we talked about earlier. So I think autonomous cars are the future. They dramatically increase safety. They reduce congestion. I think they're going to increase the car sharing business as well, in that it'll end up becoming almost like a private jet sharing type of thing, where if you're not using your car in the middle of the day, then it can be leveraged elsewhere. So I think it's the future. I think when we talk about Canada getting involved in the space, we need to be collaborating and innovating with companies like this and try to figure out, but the software is the real value. So to answer your question, I think it is a huge breakthrough, and I think the real value, I see it on the aerospace side. You talk about a fighter jet now, an F-35, it's a software product. It is a software product. So that's where autonomous cars are at, I believe.
Well, and a lot of big Canadian plays in that. QNX is involved in most of the autonomous cars. Stratford is making big plays to get involved. There is a big role and a big sort of part of the world to be studied here in terms of how these autonomous cars work in winter.
Yeah, and Canada's been a bit of a branch plant mentality when it comes to the automotive sector. So if we can get a piece of one of these platforms, global value chains that are sold around the world, that'll be good.
Really quickly before you go, I have to ask you about this study out showing that ramen is replacing tobacco as the most popular currency in U.S. prisons. This is a funny story, but is it fundamentally about prison budgets and making, the food getting worse and overall budgets just collapsing at these privatized prisons in the U.S.?
Yeah, it seems to me like we're hitting a real crisis point with the amount of people in prison in the U.S. and the cost pressures. But on a lighter note, I think I was onto something at university because I'm confident I lived on ramen noodles. I think it also talks to your hierarchy of needs, though. And when you have a non-monetary barter system like this, I think food is probably the most valuable thing to trade.
All right, we got to leave it there. Nicole Verkindt, it is always a pleasure.
Thanks, Peter. Nice to be here.